The scrapyard stretched endlessly across the arid plains of Ganymede, its horizon a jagged skyline of rusted starships and shattered spacefaring dreams. Kayla Mason wiped the sweat from her brow, her dark hair pulled back in a tight braid as she maneuvered her hoverloader through the maze of broken metal. Ganymede's twin suns glinted off polished shards and corroded holes alike, painting the landscape with a surreal mix of light and shadow. This was where dreams went to die or, in Kayla's case, to be reborn. Kayla had spent her entire life among these forgotten remnants of interstellar glory. To her, these scraps weren't just trash, they were a puzzle, a challenge, and sometimes even a promise of discovery. She had restored dozens of small craft from the yard, selling them off to traders or explorers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers, a life of independence and endless tinkering. Today, though, felt different. She'd received a tip from Lem, the yard's grizzled overseer, about a ship buried deep in the forgotten section of the lot. It's not like the usual junk, he'd grumbled through his ever-present cigar. Old tech. Way older than anything I've seen. It's your kind of weird, Kayla. She didn't need more than that. After hours of navigating through precariously balanced towers of derelict ships, Kayla finally saw it. Hidden beneath layers of collapsed wreckage was the outline of a vessel, its hull sleek and almost unblemished despite its apparent age. She climbed off the loader and stood there for a moment, staring. It was beautiful. The ship's design was like nothing she'd ever encountered, smooth, angular lines that seemed to flow like liquid, with faint symbols etched into its sides. They were almost glyph-like, intricate and alien, yet hauntingly familiar. Kayla ran her gloved hand over the cool, dark metal, marveling at how pristine it felt. Most ships in the yard were pitted with rust and wear, but this one seemed untouched, as though it had been waiting for someone to find it. "What are you?" she murmured to the silent craft. The ship remained silent, but something about it pulled at her, a whisper at the edge of her mind. Ignoring the shiver that ran down her spine, Kayla began assessing the damage. The landing gear was half buried in the dirt, and a jagged hole near the rear hinted at a catastrophic power failure, but the core structure was intact. Even more surprising, the material was lightweight but incredibly dense, unlike any alloy she'd ever seen. Getting it back to her workshop was no small feat. It took hours of digging, jury-rigging a stabilizer, and coaxing the loader into dragging the ship through the winding paths of the scrapyard. By the time she parked it in her hangar, her arms ached, her back screamed in protest, and the Ganymede suns had set, bathing the yard in a deep indigo twilight. Exhausted but exhilarated, Kayla stood back to take in the ship under the harsh glow of her workshop lights. It was even more impressive up close. The symbols seemed to shimmer faintly as she moved around the hull, like they were reacting to her presence. "What secrets are you hiding?" she whispered again, a mix of awe and curiosity lacing her voice. She set to work immediately, starting with the basics, patching up the hole in the hull and running diagnostic scans. The ship's systems were unlike anything she'd encountered before. The power conduits were laced with crystalline filaments that glowed faintly, and the control panels, though dark, were embedded with patterns that looked more organic than mechanical. When she finally accessed the main console, it hummed to life with a low, melodic tone. The symbols on the hull flared briefly, and Kayla jumped back, her heart pounding. Then the light dimmed, leaving only a soft glow emanating from the console. "Okay," she said aloud, her voice trembling. "Definitely not standard issue." As she worked late into the night, Kayla began to uncover fragments of the ship's history. Embedded in the console was an ancient data core, encrypted, but still functional. She managed to extract a few fragmented files, star charts of unfamiliar constellations, schematics for technology she couldn't comprehend, and a name repeated several times in a language she didn't know. When she cross-referenced the charts with modern databases, they pointed to regions of the galaxy long considered uncharted. Her heart raced as the pieces began to come together. This ship wasn't just old, it was ancient, predating anything she'd ever encountered. And it wasn't just a relic. It was alive in ways she couldn't yet explain. As the first light of dawn crept into her workshop, Kayla sat on the floor, leaning against the cool metal of the ship. Her mind buzzed with possibilities. She had no idea what she'd found, but one thing was certain: her life, and perhaps the galaxy, was about to change forever. The celestial arrow sat in Kayla's workshop, its sleek hull gleaming under the bright lights. The enigmatic ship seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, as though alive yet dormant, waiting for something or someone to awaken it. For weeks, Kayla had poured every ounce of her knowledge into restoring the ship. Every system she repaired seemed to unlock a new mystery. It wasn't just a vessel, it was a marvel of engineering that defied everything she knew. One night, as she worked to rewire what appeared to be the navigation panel, the ship responded. A low hum filled the workshop, and the once dark console flickered to life. Symbols danced across its surface, glowing in rhythmic patterns, their light casting strange shadows on the walls. Kayla froze, the wrench slipping from her hand. "What the?" she muttered, her pulse quickening. She hesitated before reaching out, her fingers brushing the smooth, cool surface of the console. The reaction was immediate. A wave of energy surged through the ship, and the symbols coalesced into coherent patterns. The central display projected a hologram into the air above it, a glowing map of the galaxy. Kayla's breath caught. She recognized some of the constellations, but many were unfamiliar, scattered across regions that modern star charts labeled as unexplored. The map began to shift, zooming in on a particular quadrant, and then it focused on a single point, a system she had never seen before. At the center of the projection, a small, crystalline object hovered, pulsating softly. "What are you trying to show me?" Kayla whispered, her voice barely audible. As if in response, a hidden compartment in the console slid open. Inside was a translucent crystal, about the size of her palm, glowing faintly with an inner light. She reached for it, her fingers tingling as they closed around its smooth surface. The moment she lifted it, a surge of information flooded her mind: images, sounds, and languages she didn't understand, yet felt inexplicably familiar. She staggered back, clutching her head as visions flashed before her eyes. Alien landscapes, grand councils of beings from dozens of species, and a fleet of ships identical to the celestial arrow. She saw negotiations, treaties signed under brilliant stars, and finally, a catastrophic event: a war that shattered alliances and left the galaxy divided. When the flood of images subsided, Kayla found herself on the floor, the crystal still glowing in her hand. The ship's hum had grown louder, more insistent, as if urging her to act. She scrambled to her feet, her heart racing. "What is this thing?" she asked aloud, holding the crystal up to the hologram. The symbols on the map began to shift again, forming what looked like coordinates. Kayla turned to her computer, inputting the coordinates into her navigation software. It took a moment to process, but the result made her jaw drop. The location wasn't on any current maps. It was deep in the uncharted regions of the galaxy, far beyond the boundaries of known space. The software labeled it as System Theta 974, an area surrounded by cautionary warnings and myths of ships vanishing without a trace. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, staring at the screen. The celestial arrow seemed to respond, its hum rising in pitch. Lights along the walls of the workshop flickered as the ship's systems powered up further. It was almost as if it was urging her to go. She hesitated. Venturing into uncharted space wasn't just risky, it was practically suicidal. But something deep inside her, a feeling she couldn't quite explain, told her this wasn't just a random coincidence. She'd been drawn to this ship for a reason, and now it was guiding her toward something greater than she could imagine. Gathering her courage, Kayla secured the crystal in the ship's console. Instantly, the ship's interior lit up with vibrant colors, the symbols on the walls glowing brighter than ever. The hum became a steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, and the engines roared to life. Kayla barely had time to strap into the pilot's chair as the ship initiated its launch sequence on its own. "Wait! I'm not ready," she shouted, but the ship seemed to have other plans. The hangar doors slid open, and the celestial arrow rose gracefully into the air, its thrusters glowing with a brilliant blue light. Kayla's heart pounded as the ship ascended into Ganymede's thin atmosphere, her hands gripping the controls that seemed to respond to her every thought. As they breached the atmosphere and the vast expanse of space opened before her, the ship stabilized, its navigation system locking onto the mysterious coordinates. The holographic map shifted again, displaying the route to System Theta 974 in intricate detail. Kayla took a deep breath, her mind racing with questions. Why had the ship been abandoned? What was so important about these coordinates? And why had it chosen her? She glanced at the glowing crystal embedded in the console, its soft light illuminating her face. Whatever lay ahead, she knew there was no turning back now. As the ship engaged its faster-than-light drive, the stars outside blurred into streaks of light. The celestial arrow had awakened, and it was taking her on a journey that would change her life and possibly the fate of the galaxy forever. The celestial arrow dropped out of faster-than-light travel, emerging into a pocket of space so serene it felt almost sacred. Before Kayla stretched a nebula of swirling blue and gold, its luminescence bathing the ship's hull in an ethereal glow. At the heart of the nebula was the system her ship had guided her to System Theta 974. Its centerpiece was an immense, ringed gas giant orbited by a cluster of small moons, one of which appeared to be her destination. Kayla's heart raced as the ship automatically adjusted its trajectory. The console glowed brighter, and the holographic map now displayed a detailed image of the moon, highlighting a specific location on its surface. Her fingers danced over the controls, still amazed at how responsive the ship felt, almost as if it were alive. As the celestial arrow descended into the moon's thin atmosphere, Kayla saw a sprawling structure below. It was an enormous complex of crystalline towers and interconnected domes, shimmering like ice under the dim light of the distant sun. The architecture was alien yet beautiful, radiating an aura of ancient purpose. She felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as though she had seen this place before in the visions the crystal had shown her. The ship landed smoothly in what appeared to be an abandoned docking bay. Kayla hesitated, staring out of the viewport. The silence of the place was unnerving, and the air seemed heavy with anticipation. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her toolkit and the crystal, which pulsed softly in her hand, and descended the ramp. The docking bay was massive, its walls inscribed with the same glyphs she had seen on the ship. As she walked, the crystal's glow grew brighter, illuminating her path. The quiet was broken only by the echo of her boots against the polished floor. Kayla reached what looked like a central chamber, its entrance framed by towering arches. Inside, the chamber was dominated by a massive, circular device, an intricate construct of metal and crystal that pulsed with faint energy. Around its base were carvings and glyphs that seemed to tell a story. Kayla knelt, brushing her fingers over the carvings, her mind racing to decipher their meaning. The images depicted a coalition of beings, humanoid, insectoid, aquatic, all gathered around a similar crystal. Together, they forged what appeared to be a treaty, symbolized by radiant beams connecting their worlds. The next carvings were darker. Fleets of ships clashed in battle, alliances shattered, and the crystal was fragmented, scattered across the stars. The final image showed a lone ship, identical to the celestial arrow, carrying a single glowing shard into the void. Kayla's breath caught. The crystal, she whispered, looking down at the artifact in her hand. It wasn't just a power source, it was a piece of something much larger, much more significant. The ship hadn't just chosen her randomly, it had brought her here to restore what had been lost. Before she could process further, the circular device in the center of the chamber sprang to life. Lights coursed through its structure, and a holographic figure appeared, a tall, regal alien with elongated limbs and a calm, commanding presence. Its translucent form shimmered as it spoke in a language Kayla didn't understand, but the crystal in her hand reacted, flooding her mind with translations. "Welcome, bearer of the crystal," the figure said, its voice resonating with both authority and relief. "You have brought hope where there was only despair." Kayla stumbled back, stunned. Who? What are you? I am the Echo, the figure replied, a remnant of the Galactic Peace Alliance, tasked with preserving its knowledge and guiding those who would restore it. The crystal you hold is a fragment of the Keystone, the artifact that unified our coalition and maintained peace across the galaxy. Kayla looked at the glowing shard in her hand, its light now pulsing in time with the device. But why me? I'm just a mechanic. I don't even understand what this thing is. You underestimate yourself, the Echo said, its gaze unwavering. The Keystone is sentient. It chooses those who possess the qualities necessary to restore harmony, courage, ingenuity, and an unyielding spirit. You have been chosen, and with the Celestial Arrow as your guide, you can reunite the fragments of the Keystone and reignite the alliances it once forged. Kayla's head spun. And if I don't? The Echo's form flickered, its tone growing grave. The galaxy is on the brink of chaos. Old rivalries fester, and war looms. Without the Keystone, there will be no balance, only destruction. Kayla swallowed hard, the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. Where are the other fragments? The Echo gestured, and the holographic map reappeared, now dotted with several glowing points scattered across the galaxy. The fragments were hidden in places of great significance to the Alliance. Each location will test your resolve and the ship's capabilities. Be prepared, bearer. The journey ahead will not be easy. Kayla nodded, her fear tempered by a growing determination. She had always thrived on challenges, and this was the greatest one yet. I'll do it, she said firmly. I'll find the fragments. I'll finish what the Alliance started. The Echo's form began to fade, its final words echoing in the chamber. May the stars guide you, and may the Keystone bring light to the darkness. As the hologram disappeared, the circular device powered down, leaving the chamber bathed in the soft glow of the crystal. Kayla stood alone, the enormity of her mission sinking in. She didn't know what dangers lay ahead, but one thing was clear: she wasn't just a mechanic anymore. She was a bearer of hope, and the fate of the galaxy now rested in her hands. Returning to the Celestial Arrow, Kayla strapped herself into the pilot's chair, the crystal securely placed in its compartment. The ship's systems came alive with renewed vigor, as if sensing her resolve. Let's go find the others, she said, and with that, the ship rose into the sky, its engines blazing as it set course for the next fragment of the Keystone. The Celestial Arrow streaked across the void, its course set for the final location of the Keystone's fragments. The ship's hum had become a familiar, almost comforting presence to Kayla, a steady reminder of the bond she had formed with it. Each fragment she had recovered so far had brought her closer to understanding the Galactic Peace Alliance and its vision, a unity so profound it transcended species, culture, and distance. But the journey had been anything but smooth. Every stop had tested her ingenuity and resolve. She had navigated hostile planets, outwitted marauders, and faced her own doubts. With each challenge, Kayla had grown, no longer just a mechanic scavenging in scrapyards, but a diplomat, a mediator, and, to some, a symbol of hope. The ship approached its destination, a massive, artificial station suspended in a pocket of space surrounded by pulsating stars. The Echo had called it Sanctum Prime, the heart of the Galactic Peace Alliance in its prime. The station was ancient yet intact, its colossal spires radiating a faint blue glow. It was here that the fragments would unite, the Keystone reformed, and the galaxy's fractured alliances potentially mended. As the Celestial Arrow docked, Kayla's heart raced. The final fragment, recovered from a perilous mission on a volcanic world, sat secure in the ship's console. She grabbed it, its light now blending harmoniously with the others, and descended into the station. The interior of Sanctum Prime was a marvel of engineering, its architecture blending technology and art in seamless harmony. Glyphs lined the walls, glowing faintly as Kayla passed, reacting to the presence of the Keystone. At the center of the station was a vast chamber, its floor dominated by a circular platform inscribed with intricate patterns. Above it hung a massive crystalline structure, fractured but still beautiful. Kayla stepped onto the platform, and the fragments in her hands began to glow more brightly, as if yearning to reunite. A low hum filled the chamber, and the echo appeared once more, its holographic form flickering but resolute. "You have done well, bearer," the echo said. "The keystone's fragments are ready to be restored. Place them in the core, and the station will reactivate." Kayla hesitated. She had come so far, but doubt gnawed at her. Would this truly bring peace, or was it just a desperate hope clinging to a relic of the past? She shook her head, pushing the thoughts aside. There was no turning back now. One by one, she placed the fragments into the designated slots on the platform. As the last piece clicked into place, the chamber erupted with light. The fractured crystal above began to mend itself, beams of energy connecting its shards until it was whole once more. The platform beneath her pulsed, and the glyphs on the walls shone brilliantly. Suddenly, the chamber filled with holographic projections. Representatives of countless species appeared, speaking in their native tongues. Kayla realized these were historical recordings, debates, negotiations, and moments of triumph from the Alliance's past. The air thrummed with their voices, a symphony of cooperation and unity. The echo's voice broke through the cacophony. "The keystone is restored, but its power is only the beginning. You must now use it to guide the galaxy toward peace. The Alliance's legacy is not in its artifacts, but in its ideals." As the echo spoke, Kayla's crystal interface began to display live transmissions from across the galaxy. The news of her mission had spread, thanks to encounters with traders, refugees, and diplomats along the way. Factions once hostile had taken notice, their leaders intrigued by the possibility of reconciliation. The galaxy, though skeptical, was watching. Kayla took a deep breath, stepping forward. "This is Kayla Mason, aboard the restored Celestial Arrow," she began, her voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "I know the galaxy is divided, broken by years of mistrust and conflict. But I've seen what we're capable of when we work together. The Alliance wasn't just about treaties or trade routes, it was about unity, about respecting our differences and building something greater. I'm asking you to come to the table to take the first step toward peace." Her words, broadcast through the station's powerful transmitters, echoed across the galaxy. Some listened with skepticism, others with hope, and a few with outright disdain. But the seed was planted. In the weeks that followed, Kayla's message began to take root. Representatives from warring factions arrived at Sanctum Prime, drawn by curiosity or desperation. Kayla found herself at the center of delicate negotiations, using the knowledge stored in the keystone and the wisdom of the echo to mediate. It wasn't easy. Old grudges flared, and distrust ran deep. But Kayla's tenacity and empathy shone through. She refused to give up, reminding the galaxy's leaders of what they stood to gain and what they risked losing if they failed. Gradually, agreements were reached. Small alliances formed, trade routes reopened, and treaties were signed. The Celestial Arrow became a symbol of hope, its once forgotten hull now the emblem of a renewed effort for unity. Months later, Kayla stood on the bridge of the Celestial Arrow, gazing out at the stars. The galaxy was far from perfect, but it was healing. She had found her purpose not just in restoring a ship, but in reigniting a dream. The echo's voice echoed softly in her mind. "Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding. You have given the galaxy the tools to seek it." Kayla smiled, her hand resting on the console as the ship's systems purred in response. "We've come a long way," she said, her voice filled with determination. "But there's still work to do." With that, she set a new course, ready to continue her mission not as a mechanic or a pilot, but as a peacekeeper, guided by the light of the Keystone and the legacy of the Galactic Peace Alliance. The stars stretched out before her, infinite and full of promise.